Hey everybody, it's Tim Thompson with SPF Insurance, and today we're going to talk about some specific gotchas or things that parents need to be aware of when it comes to baby health insurance, and in particular, newborn baby health insurance. These are things that trip up a lot of people, and I run into this a lot. But the first one is during the first 30 days that after the baby is born, the baby is covered under the mother's health insurance plan. But before the end of the 30 days, you have to make a decision about whether to leave the baby on the mother's plan or put the baby onto the father's plan. And you have to make that decision and then notify the appropriate insurance company as to which plan you're actually selecting. If you do nothing, many of the insurance companies will actually drop the child from the mother's plan at the end of 30 days. Then it's very difficult, if not impossible, to get the child back on insurance without having to pay a 20% surcharge or have a rated plan at a much higher premium. So making that decision within the first 30 days is critical, and rather than waiting till the very end, you're always going to be better off to do it sooner. So after being home for a couple of weeks, that's the time to sit down with a broker and figure out which plan makes sense and make that change. The second one is the one that shocks people the most, and that's actually that the first year of a child's life as a baby is the most expensive insurance time of their entire life. The reason for that's pretty straightforward because in the US, about 10 to 13% of all births are actually premature. So what that means is that 10 to 13% of all the babies are going to spend 1 to 6 weeks in the neonatal intensive care unit getting 24-hour a day care and monitoring. That's very expensive. So the cost to cover that is something that's factored into the price for all maternity health insurance plans. So just be forewarned that those plans are going to cost a lot. And it's not uncommon for the cost of the baby's insurance to actually be more than the cost of the parent's insurance for that first year. Now, the good thing is that in year two, the price for that baby insurance plan is probably going to drop by anywhere from 40 to 60%, which is pretty typical. So for the next 5 years, the rates for the child will probably go down a little bit each year until they reach somewhere between 5 to 7 years old. And then at that point in time, the rates will start to climb back up again as they get older from one year to the next. But just be forewarned and perhaps even look into that ahead of time before the baby is born so that you know what the cost dynamics are going to look like. The last one is the one that really trips people up the most. And this one's kind of subtle in that all of the health insurance related costs associated with the baby being born and any care that the baby receives at the hospital for the first 30 days after it's born is paid for by the mother's health insurance plan. But once you make the decision and put the child onto a specific plan, whether it's the mother's plan or the father's plan, you then have to pay the premiums from the day the baby is born until, from that point in time on. So typically what happens is people make the decision around the end of that 30 days, then they get a bill for the next month, but it also includes the 30 days worth of coverage when the baby was first born. So the very first bill they see for their baby's health insurance is for 2 months. And as we've already talked about, it's already expensive to have a child on health insurance in the first place. And then to get 2 months worth of that all at the same time typically is a pretty big shock. So be aware of that. Look into these details ahead of time. And for more details about how to pick the right plan and making that decision between mother and father's health insurance and additional facts that you're really going to need to be aware of when it comes to baby health insurance, check the blog at the link right below here. There's a lot more details in that particular article. And if this has been helpful for you, click the like button or the share button right here below. So hopefully this has been helpful, and until we meet again, protect the health of your wealth by protecting your wealth of health. Bye now.